Now, former U.S. Attorney and the Executive Director of Right on Crime, our good friend Brett Tolman is back with us. Brett, always great to see you.
Great to see you, John.
All right, so I have a ton of questions about this case. In fact, I had questions about all these cases brought against President Trump, but particularly this one, because you heard Mike Carter there mention how this normally would be past the window of statute of limitations here. Alvin Bragg charged in this case, even though the previous district attorney, Cyrus Vance, chose not to. There was internal strife in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office about this case. From your perspective as a prosecutor, tell us about how unique the method by which these charges were brought actually is.
Yeah, John, thanks again for having me on. Great to be with you. I will say there truly isn't an intelligent, thoughtful prosecutor in this country that would bring this case. And you can line up a number of other issues you might want to investigate, but even Alvin Bragg, when he first reviewed this, indicated that he was not going to pursue it. The reason they did was because one of the prosecutors that was assigned to investigate it left the office, resigned, wrote a book. His name is Pomerantz. He wrote a book outlining the case and applied pressure, and then the media applied pressure, and Alvin Bragg caved to it. I'll tell you the worst possible feeling in the world, that empty stomach feeling when you're standing in the courtroom, when you've brought a case that you really have bad facts and the law seems to have been stretched or manipulated, because even in those instances, you may find jurors that don't like it, regardless of their politics.
Like Letitia James, we know Alvin Bragg is a political operative too. And, you know, again, drawing back on your perspective as a prosecutor, if I'm telling you, you're the prosecutor and your main witness, in this case, Michael Cohen, has pleaded guilty to 5 counts of willful tax evasion, 1 count of making false statements to a bank, 1 count of causing an unlawful campaign contribution, and 1 count of making an excessive campaign contribution. Now, if someone's pleading guilty to those charges and the person you're trying to convict is also facing similar charges, does Michael Cohen have any credibility? And does it matter, considering the jury pool in Manhattan?
Yeah, I mean, consider what this case actually boils down to. You are bringing a case that expired by the statute of limitations. That's a falsifying a business record. But you are using a federal statute claiming there was a federal campaign violation. And so there's more recent falsification that we should use. And you're going to support all of that with a serial perjurer. And you're going to have to try to ignore the fact that the Department of Justice, who investigates that campaign violation, dismissed and declined and did not have sufficiency to bring it. I mean, that is the world of Alvin Bragg right now, and he'll be in the courtroom. And could they get a conviction? Absolutely, they can. But there are a lot of things lining up, John, for also, you know, an appeal that's going to be fairly robust. Consider this judge. They're gonna eliminate some of these jurors because they gave campaign contributions to Joe Biden, right, or to Donald Trump. They're going to eliminate them. But this judge did the same thing, and he's not being taken off the case. So that is at its heart of this weaponization of the criminal justice system against someone, when the judge will ignore that he has bias, and he's the only one that can rule on it. They'll get rid of jurors that they think have bias, and they'll let a case go forward that is coming from only serial perjurers who have extreme bias. I mean, that is not the justice system that any of us want to see, but it is the justice system we have in New York.
And again, this is somewhat similar to the civil fraud cases, where who is the victim here? Who are the people of New York, I guess? I don't know. Who is supposed to be the victim? We're not going to hear from anybody on the stand, right, complaining that they were victimized in this whole entire event, right? Because I believe Stormy Daniels still owes Donald Trump $300,000 for defaming him.
Well, I think that's right, and over $600,000 in legal fees that are owed to his side. But yes, you raise a really, really good point, John, and that is there isn't a victim here, because the underlying crime they're saying is that on $150,000 that went to his lawyer, that then they allege went to Stormy Daniels, that in their accounting books it was ledgered as a payment to the lawyer. Now, what they then are suggesting is the only way that this should have been documented was it should have said a hush payment. I mean, that's in essence the backward logic of this prosecutor arguing that they should have put in their accounting hush payment for money that did go, in fact, to their lawyer.
And I know Alvin Bragg probably watches MSNBC. I shouldn't say I know. I'm just guessing based on the tilt towards MSNBC. Can you imagine, Brett, the life force being sucked out of Alvin Bragg when he watches Michael Avenatti from prison go on MSNBC and say this case doesn't really have the standing to come forth right now? I can only imagine. Alvin Bragg definitely right there having no problem bringing this case forward, even though very few people who are actually, objective about this issue think it should be brought, including Brett Tolman, who's always great. Great to have you with us, Brett. We appreciate it, Brett.
Thanks, John.